And so I'd like to officially begin. Welcome, everyone. Whether you're joining us here live or viewing this later as a recording, we're so happy to have you with us. My name is Naomi Hoffer. I'm the program manager for the Sheri Sobrato Brisson Brain Cancer Survivorship Program. With us also here in the Zoom background is Mary Destree, who is our Neuro-Oncology Supportive Care Services Coordinator and Liaison. So you might see some posts from Mary in the chat box throughout this program. So part of what we do here in the Sheri Sobrato Brisson Brain Cancer Survivorship Program is these webinars, these Living Well After Brain Cancer Treatment webinars, which we do monthly. In addition to these webinars, we have other services that you might be interested in, such as a neurocognitive consultation clinic, an integrative approaches 3-class series, a peer support program and Thriver community, an exercise counseling service, and a peer-led young adults with brain cancer support group. So if you want to learn more about those, we will give you links to visit our website, and feel free to let us know if you'd like us to connect you with any of those services. I'm so glad to be with you here today and for us to learn together about what it means to be dating while living with brain cancer. Many of you listening are living with this reality, and I really hope that you might hear some perspectives that you might not have thought of, and at the very least, to know that you aren't alone. So I'm thrilled to have 3 wonderful people here today to help us explore this topic as they share with us firsthand how they've handled some of these issues that arise in terms of readiness for dating, whether to disclose and when to disclose and how much to disclose, and also how to navigate relationship expectations and take care of yourself through it all. And at the end of our panel discussion, we invite you to submit your questions using that Q&A function on your Zoom screen. And we would also really love to hear from you in our after the show unrecorded segment. So we hope that you're able to stay, turn on your videos, and then we can have a dialogue with you face to face and hear your best practices or biggest concerns in regards to dating with brain cancer. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'm going to invite my panelists to come on. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce our panelists today, Katie, Dace, and Kelly. Thank you so much for being here. And rather than me kind of do a big introduction of you, I would love for our audience to hear from you directly. So Katie, maybe I'll start with you. If you could just say a little bit about yourself, maybe whatever you want to share with in terms of your diagnosis and kind of your current dating status. We'd love to hear from you.
Sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Katie. I was diagnosed in 2020 with a grade 2 astrocytoma about a month before my 22nd birthday. And before then, and even after then, I wasn't really actively in the dating scene, but have dipped my toes into it a little bit more in the past just 6 months or so. And I've been dating someone for a couple of months now.
Thank you so much. And Kelly, can you share with us a little bit about you and your dating status?
Hi guys, I'm Kelly. I got diagnosed in 2016 and maybe 2017. You know, I got a lot of opinions, but the one that really stuck was at UCSF with a slow growing glioma in the language area of my brain. And I was 37, I think. It's hard to remember now. It feels like so long ago, but just yesterday. And I had been dating, of course, and I'm still dating, and I have had serious relationships before that and since that. But right now I'm single, and I'm kind of dating myself right now. I'm not gonna lie, like I'm number one right now, but I am also dating other people as well.
I love that. Thank you. Thanks. You. And Dace.
Yeah, hi. So I'm the brain tumor senior here. I think I was first diagnosed back in 2014, and I had about 6 years of clean scans, and then I had a recurrence actually last year in 2021. And I've kind of navigated a number of different dating scenarios. I've been single happily. I've been single kind of wantingly. I've been casually dating, and I've now been in a serious relationship for about 3 years. So I've had a number of different perspectives as far as dating through this experience. And my initial diagnosis was a grade 2 astrocytoma. And most recently, during my recurrence, upgraded to a grade 4 astrocytoma. So kind of a few different experiences there.
Great. Okay. And I'd love to just then continue with you, Dace, for another question about what about brain cancer, dating when you have brain cancer makes it different from before, perhaps, before you were diagnosed with brain cancer? What makes dating with brain cancer unique?
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind, first off, I just want to say this is a really cool kind of format. This is a unique thing because I think all of the webinars that I've attended before tend to have kind of, I don't want to say a scripted element, but there are some kind of scripts to follow. And I just want to let everyone know that we are just having a conversation here. We're not following a script. We're just kind of talking about our experiences. So, these thoughts can kind of emerge as you ask the question. And the first thing that kind of comes to me when, thinking about what's different about this experience is, there's a couple actually, but the big one is the level of uncertainty around, how, like, should I be honest about this? Should I be talking about this? Is this part of, my identity, or is it like a thing that happened to me? And, that's a hard thing just to figure out whether you're dating or not. But then as soon as you're trying to figure out how to interact with other human beings who you might be interested in, whether it's casually or not, like it just adds this whole other really like big thing to navigate. And I think, the questions around who am I and what do I want become a lot, I don't want to say heavier, but just bigger. They become a lot bigger than just trying to, casually navigate these things without this experience. And I think that can be said for anyone that goes through any sort of major health thing. But, Naomi and Katie, I know you guys have heard me say this a bunch, but, when the thing that makes you who you are has had such a massive impact on it, it really can be difficult to navigate that in your own life. So,
yeah,
I think, that's probably the biggest thing that comes to mind.
Thank you. Katie or Kelly, do you want to add to that?
I would say that, I guess what comes to my mind is just from a recent experience that I had with I get quarterly scans, and my most recent one was on Tuesday, I guess yesterday. Feels like a lifetime ago already, but I notice every time that there is this period of darkness that emerges about 2 weeks prior to every scan. And that's something that I think all of my fellow panelists and probably people on this call can relate to. But when you're dating, especially at the early stages, it's very hard to reckon with that internally and then also try and communicate that or even withhold it from the person that you're seeing. And it becomes very tricky to try and keep it light in a situation like that, because all of your inner demons are coming out and you're maybe trying to safeguard the person that you're with because you're thinking, well, I don't want to unload all of my stuff onto them because I'm barely coping with it as is. And so I think trying to balance that and communicate that is so tricky, because the odds are that the person you're with has never had or been through an experience like it. And so it can feel very isolating, and it's tricky to find the commonalities when you just feel so different.
Yeah. It's funny because sometimes I don't feel different at all. And then I can swing all the way over to feeling incredibly alone and really different, even when I'm with someone, because we're talking also about vulnerability and letting people in. And I think it really, like, we all have stuff that impacts our attachment and things, traumas from our past. And I feel it really, it supersizes that. So I think before I could easily do whatever I was doing and keep going, but things are really forced to the front for me to have to deal with. And I have to figure out how to manage my own inner demons, like you're saying, so I can even have a healthy relationship now. So just, it adds a lot to that, but I get that feeling. Yeah.
Thank you so much, all of you. So kind of along that lines then, how did you know, if for those of you who hadn't been dating kind of throughout the diagnosis and then was starting to date again afterwards, how did you know when to start dating again? Like, was it helpful to wait a period of time, for you to kind of regroup before dating? So Kelly, maybe I'll start with you.
I loved this question. I started dating super soon, and it was very weird. Obviously I was grieving a lot of things. Things were so different, but weirdly, like still kind of felt the same. Your life feels very the same and very different at the same time. It just kind of tends to go back to normal and you start to do the things you used to do. I think you should start dating when you feel like it. I think there's a lot of pressure we put on ourselves and on dating. And I think when you date, you're learning. And if it doesn't go great, I think I'm always trying to say to myself, who cares? It's fine. I'll just keep going. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I think that's personal, right?
But for you, I don't think it sounded like you kind of jumped right in. You were comfortable just kind of going back to it. And
I jumped right back in. I don't know if I was comfortable. There was a lot of time where I was healing and hibernating. And I think going out on dates made me feel like I was doing normal stuff, which made me feel a bit better. I don't know if I did feel better, but I did it because I felt like doing that. And just because I have a brain tumor doesn't mean I have to wait until I'm all the way better. Then when will I do it? I have to start somewhere. It's like ice skating. Like, I'm not going to go you have to learn how to ice skate. You're not going to go once you read 8 books on ice skating. Maybe I'll fall down a lot, right? But then I'll get back up and figure out what I'm doing.
Thank you. Katie or Dace, do you want to comment on that about timing and when it's a good time to start dating again? When it was for you? How did you know?
I'm happy to jump in. This runs into one of the questions that I think we're going to touch on later, but about 4 months after my surgery, I started developing post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. And one of those symptoms was that I couldn't bear to be touched. I really freaked out. My parents couldn't hug me or anything. And so obviously that is not conducive to dating, or at least dating well, or dating for a long time. And that went on it's still ongoing, but it's a lot better. But in February of this year, there was a guy who stopped me on the street and asked me for my number. And it sounds creepy. It wasn't creepy. I'm just going to put that out there. But if you had asked me at the time or the day before if I was ready to be dating, I would have said absolutely not. But I was having a very good day that one day. And so I just said, what the hell? Why not? And from that, I came to realize that I had done a lot of growth over the year, and it was good to do something new and to do something that I thought was outside of my comfort zone, or that I thought I wasn't prepared for. And since then, I've been in a relationship with someone else. And so I think that just goes to show how, like, to Kelly's point, you have to dip in and you have to dip out. You have to be willing to say, I'm just going to try it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Dace, do you want to add anything around that?
Yeah, I really agree with both of what Kelly and Katie said, and I got to say, like, I'm kind of inspired by the level of courage that it takes to have both of those actions, to take both of those actions, just say, you know what, I'm just going to do it. I think dating is just one of those things that, like, it doesn't matter what phase of life you're in or who you are, your demographic. For a lot of people, it's challenging for a lot of different reasons. And for, some of this, like the stuff I mentioned in my first answer about, questions about identity and, being like, who am I? What do I want? All of those things can get, for me, I can get really in my head about that stuff. And so it's really refreshing to hear this, like, you know what, sometimes you just gotta try it. You just gotta, accept that this thing happened to you. And it shouldn't stop you from, having a happy life and trying new things and trying to connect with people. And I really love what both of Katie and Kelly said about just trying it out. For me, I had probably kind of stops and starts. I mean, when I had my first diagnosis, I had actually just ended a serious relationship, and it didn't go well. Like, it was not a graceful exit. And that was really, really challenging to be dealing with that, like, as I'm dealing with this other insanely crazy thing. And so I think that part of that experience of like exiting a serious relationship and then having this happen, and also feel like I just want someone to help take care of me right now. Like, I'm hurt and I'm in need. It was a really weird thing to try to navigate that. And I think that's why I like the kind of attitude that Katie and Kelly just mentioned. Because for me, it was harder. I really, I wanted to date, but I also, Kelly, I heard mention at the start of this, I think this question or the last one, that she's dating herself right now. And I really like that too, because really our relationships with ourselves are not just as important. They are the most important relationship that we have. And if we're going to be having, if we're going to be exploring relationships with other people, it really helps to have a good understanding of where am I, what do I want, what am I, what do I feel comfortable asking for? And that stuff's really hard. So I love the idea of just trying it out and see what happens and learning as you go, because we're not going to have all the answers.
But you know what, to your point, I mean, this is kind of what I feel like you're saying too, which I really agree with, is you still need to be caring for yourself, because there's so much trauma in this. And then I also ended a relationship and then realized I had a brain tumor, and that feeling of just wanting to be cared for. I mean, I was dating, but I wasn't maybe even ready to date, but I still was doing it, and then I could see these patterns of behavior. So I think the point, working on yourself and healing yourself is just as in, I mean, I'm not going to say don't date, but that to me, that needed to happen alongside of dating for me to successfully do it. And I feel like it will never be over, but that's okay. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all. So now if we could talk a little bit about, sorry, anybody else, anything else to say about that?
Okay. I'm good.
Yeah, right. Just in terms of the whole big question of disclosure, and how did you know if you wanted to disclose, to share your diagnosis, and, at what point in the relationship, and, if at all? So I'd love to hear maybe. Yeah, Dace, do you want to start us off with this one?
Sure. This one is funny for me because it's I don't know that I'm going to have a great answer, because my solution is really cut and dry for me now. Where I'm at is I'm an open book about this. Like, I have owned this experience and this kind of process and journey, and I don't want it to get in the way of connecting with other human beings, period, whether it's dating or family or strangers or anyone. So I find that when I am kind of guarded about it, I tend to just have like this really, it creates a lot more complexity to navigate. Even this question alone, when and how much, like, I'd rather not have the anxiety of that. So I'm just really honest about it. I used to say, hey, I had a brain tumor, this happened. I don't say it like, hi, my name's Dace and I had a brain tumor. But like, sometimes it can feel like that though. Like, sometimes I just, I bring it up pretty early, because people ask questions when you're getting to know them. They say, they'll ask questions to try and get to know who you are as a person. And it's like, I can't imagine that either of you don't feel this way, but like, this is such an intrinsic part of my human experience at this point that like, how can I not mention it? It's changed me in so many ways. And my philosophy on this now is I would rather try to find a way to leverage that and leverage this experience as a entry point to more connection, as opposed to try to diminish it, you know, let people ask the questions and answer them honestly. And I have full recognition that like that takes a certain amount of, you know, having processed, like what Kelly was talking about earlier, like getting, you know, becoming at peace with one's own challenges and demons and things. But like, I'm an open book about it pretty early on at this point. So.
And just a follow-up question, have you always been that way, or was there a time after, you know, when you're first diagnosed that you were kind of more closed off?
Yeah, I think I was more closed off at first, but I think it's been so long now. The way that I've handled it has kind of changed a little bit. I think I was a little more closed off at first because I just wasn't ready to identify, and you've heard me say this before, as like the brain tumor guy.
Yeah.
And now I'm fine with that. Like, let me be the brain tumor guy. Like, we don't have like a certain way that we look, you know, it affects all kinds of people from all kinds of walks of lives. And I think maybe just for the first few months, I was a little guarded because I was still healing. It was so fresh and it's such a surprise. Like, I didn't have I didn't have many symptoms beforehand. So it wasn't, you know, it was a very big surprise. But once I started kind of talking about it, what I would say is it's a thing that happened to me in the past, and don't worry, like, I'm fine now. Because I don't know if y'all have had this experience, but when you tell someone like, oh, I had a brain tumor or I have brain cancer, it's like you hit someone with a bomb. They like can't, like, they don't know how to process it. So I found myself getting in the habit of kind of reassuring them, like, don't worry, I'm okay. And that has its pros and cons. Maybe we can get into that later. But I definitely found myself disclosing and then kind of managing and then just moving forward.
Yeah. Thank you. Kelly, do you want to add on? And then Katie?
I would say, I think it's interesting. I think when I really, you know, I had definitely some trauma, and definitely, I would say, like some post-traumatic stress from this that I'm always still processing. And I think when I would find it more of my identity, maybe I would talk about it more. And the more that I've like processed this, I see so many pieces of me. And so I don't feel this urge to say this right away and talk about it so much. I think I used to talk about it a lot. And I think it's fair I introduce it almost like bluntly, and I don't express too much at first. And I give it time for me to see if these people will show up for me or I can trust them. And I divulge things as we go along. And I think it's super easy to talk about the courage. Oh, I was so brave, and it was just so neat. And I had my brain surgery, and I was awake, and I answered questions. But you know, there are deeper things that like hurt, that are always going to hurt, and they're going to come up when I get super tired, or I can't think of the words, or I have my MRI and I really wish they'd come with me, but I don't want to force them, and I want to respect their space. And I use those moments to kind of give more details when I feel safe, because you want to respect their experience of taking on this new information, but also you need someone to be present for you. And I think that takes time to figure out.
Yeah. Thank you. And then just a follow-up question for you, I guess, Kelly, like, can you kind of take us through a little bit like how that conversation was at the beginning with somebody that you're dating? Is it kind of like, oh, I have something to tell you, you know, I have a brain cancer diagnosis, or was it kind of more like dropping hints here and there, like, oh, I got a doctor's appointment and, you know, tell you more?
No, I'm pretty blunt about it. And I've always been pretty blunt about it. I think I would say something like, it's so funny. I've recently told someone, because I was dating someone and they wanted to follow me on Instagram, but I'm just extremely vulnerable on Instagram. And I tracked my whole brain tumor experience and the surgery and after, and these anniversaries and things like that. And I said, well, you know, I'm really vulnerable on Instagram. And so if you're going to see things that I haven't shared with you yet. And he said, yeah. And I said, all right, well, I'm just going to let you know. You're going to see me talking about, I had a brain tumor removed a few years ago, and you're just going to see all my feelings. And so if you have any questions, you can ask me. And then I just keep going.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't be apologizing. We're all treasures. It's one piece of me. And if they can't get with it, get going.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, that wasn't a great, I didn't really describe that well.
That's great. Perfect. Katie, how about for you? What was it like for you kind of disclosing your diagnosis and that whole conversation, if you did choose, or times that you maybe did not choose to disclose?
Yeah, I think I'm really messy about it. To be fully honest, I'm definitely still figuring it out. I would love to get to the point where Dace is at now. He's an inspiration for me in so many ways, but I think it takes a lot of courage and self-awareness to get to that point where you can just say, I'm an open book. I'm relatively at peace with this. I'm still processing things, but I want to help you understand. And I think the couple times that I've told people in the dating realm, to Kelly's point, I've also done it very bluntly, but I think my motivation for doing it bluntly is like drop a bomb, run, and see the aftermath. Genuinely. And I fully expect people to run when I drop that bomb. And then if and when they don't, my immediate reaction is, whoa, there's something seriously wrong with you. Like, you should be running so fast and you're not. So that's been interesting to realize. And my dad always tells me, you need an elevator pitch. You need a 30-second spiel where you can just tell people, but do it softly, because to Dace's point, they don't know how to react. And I can fully sympathize with that, because it's the last thing anyone's expecting to come out of your mouth. But I think you almost have to do it bluntly. It's not a pretty thing to deal with, and there's no pretty way to divulge it. I don't believe it. At least I haven't found the secret answer to doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. If you write that elevator pitch, I'm sure you'll have many people that were like, I'll have one, please.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you all so much. You're being so wonderfully honest, and I appreciate it. And so let's see we talked a little bit about how you go about disclosing. I don't know, Dace, if you want to say anything more about that, or words to use. Kelly, you mentioned like you have an Instagram, you're very open on your Instagram page. So that was a way to maybe share a lot of what you've, been dealing with brain cancer. Any other thoughts about how? And
I will jump in because I realized, as Kelly was saying, that I do something similar that she does, and I didn't realize it until she said it, which is using moments to divulge a little bit further when things happen. So the way I interpreted that, for example, my tumor is in the right frontal lobe over here, and there are some things with emotional regulation and kind of impulse control in there that are really challenging for me. And so when I find myself in a position where that stuff is being really heightened, if I'm getting really stressed out or like overstimulated, or I'm having a hard time kind of controlling my feelings, that's a good time for me to divulge a little bit more about how the brain tumor affects me, I think, as opposed to just coming right out with all this stuff. Because I mean, God, how much time do you have, right? If someone asks you a question, you're like, where do you want me to start? You want me to start with the mutation? Do you want me to start with, my clinical experience? Do you want me to start with surgery, like treatment? Like, there's so many things to it. You don't want to, no one wants to be saddled with all that. Like, to Katie's point, right up front, it's really difficult. But I think having those little moments where things happen and you can say, that's where I think tools can come in really handy, like understanding our own emotions and our own triggers. And there's all kinds of ways that we can do that: mind body skills, meditation, all kinds of different awareness tools that we can use. But in those moments, using those as a way to kind of divulge a little bit further about how the brain tumor affects me and what that actually looks like. I like that. And I think that's something that I do as well.
Great.
I would add just one thing in terms of how you share or when you share. And one thing that I've certainly done that I think makes it easier to tell someone is when you're in a moment of mutual vulnerability, however that takes shape, that I think creates an opening, because then you're more on an even level because you're feeling vulnerable, but the other person is too. And so it feels less risky.
Yeah, that's a good
I
point.
think you're right. I
Yeah.
actually did that. I did that on a first date. I was on a first date. He was sharing something very vulnerable. We were really connecting. And it really resonated with my experience. And then I just told him. And we connected in a higher level, and it was okay. It was great. We went on another date and another one. And I didn't go too deep because I wasn't ready for that. But it was sincere in the moment at the right level. And I just want to say too, it's really hard sometimes when I share out about it, because I just go like really in this positive direction and this like, you know, focus on this courage stuff. And so sometimes it can be hard to transition over. So I don't to the real stuff. So I don't know. I mean, it's hard to.
You're noticing your tendency to kind of go like, it's going to be okay. I'm getting through this. Things are fine. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it speaks to like your own inner beliefs of yourself and how worthy you feel. And, you know, that goes with trauma. So managing your own trauma, I think Dace said that is really helpful in sharing and being vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also hearing there's something about kind of intuitively kind of knowing yourself and kind of knowing when the moment is right. Like you'll kind of know when there's that opening, like you said, Katie. So thank you so much.
Yeah. And just a quick comment on that. If you maybe don't know, you know, if maybe your intuition isn't super strong, I really like Katie's point about kind of waiting for a moment of what feels like there might be mutual vulnerability, because then you're meeting someone where they are and using that as an opportunity to kind of open up. That sounds like a really good, because I'm trying to think about this from the perspective of like, what if you don't feel? And there have been times where I haven't felt connected to that intuition, and that feels like a good one. Like, oh, you just shared something really vulnerable with me. Can I tell you? Maybe even asking for permission. That might be a tool too. Can I tell you something really vulnerable? Can I tell you something, you know, that is pretty a big part of my experience? That might be a good way to do it too.
Yeah. Thank you. And I'd love to hear also if there's been any times or moments when you have shared and you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. I'm regretting doing that. Or where you're just deciding like, where you have decided, I'm not going to disclose and I feel okay about that. Like have you had any situations like that? Anyone?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Kelly, do you mind sharing? Like, what was that like for you? And
You know, I think the farther I get along with it, the less I feel like I have to tell someone.
yeah.
Because I feel I'm protecting my own self and my own energy and privacy. And I want to know people are going to be good partners now before I go divulging everything. And I think that comes from working on the trauma I've stored in my nervous system, et cetera. I'm dating someone right now, and I just don't know if I really want it to go further. And so I'm just not going to these places yet, because I don't know if I want it to go any further. You know, nothing's wrong with him, but we'll see.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that shows you your own self-worth, like, because you decide.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make any sense at all? I don't know.
It makes sense to me. I'm hearing.
Okay.
Yeah. Dace or Katie, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I'll go. I think you know, kind of piggybacking on what Kelly said, I think you said it kind of shows you your self-worth. I would also say that it shows you having those experiences where you're disclosing to other people their reactions, and then specifically not just their reactions, but then their behaviors following that is a really good way to gauge, you know, whether you really should be involved with that person right now or not. Are they able to handle that information? And there's not really any great way to know that without divulging it. And so it kind of is like a very, we don't have to make anyone wrong, you know, about their experience. We're all doing the best that we can with what we've got, and we're at different places in our journeys. But like, if someone's not ready to kind of hear that and show up in that way, or if they're like overbearing and trying to like be what I feel like is too much, it gives us opportunities to, you know, ask ourselves, what do I really want from, you know, a relationship or a partnership, or even a friendship for that matter, right? Because I'm a firm believer that like the best relationships start as friendships, straight up. You know, is the best people in my life. Doesn't matter what the romantic thing looks like we got to be friends.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm sure there are times, I know there are times where I've divulged and then kind of felt like, well, didn't really like the way that turned out, but I'm kind of struggling to remember specifics right now. I just know that I just kind of got the feeling like, okay, like maybe that's not the person for me at this time, you know, whether it's a friendship or a relationship. And so in that way, it's kind of like a good feedback mechanism.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I love that. And, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and that'll kind of help orient you towards, okay, cool. Well, I just learned where I don't want to be. And that's just as helpful as learning where you do want to be. You know, it can help you kind of move in the direction you do want to go. So
Learning, dating is learning.
Yep.
Can I just say one more thing?
Sure.
I think sometimes the way you disclose or how much you disclose, it kind of shows what you need. I think sometimes we hide things about ourselves because we're afraid we're too much. We're afraid we're unlovable because our bodies have done this or that. And we're afraid that if we really are open and honest about our true needs and truly who we are, it might make us seem unlovable because maybe we just don't feel it right now because of what's happened. Because you give up like a little bit of your sense of self when you go through something like this, like your sense of security, your sense of safety. So I think it's really important to ask yourself when you're disclosing it, how much why you do it in the way that you do it, why you tend to go that way. And if you don't want to share it, why is that? Is it because it's casual or is it because you're afraid? And then how is it really going to work in the end? Because you're not allowing for full intimacy, for someone to fully see you, fully meet you where you're at. And that's something I struggle with, to kind of really allow someone to come in and be there for me. And when they do it, it's still shocking.
Yeah. I love that, Kelly, like you're bringing up kind of this knowing yourself. Is this fear because I really don't want to be rejected because this relationship is important to me? Or is this just because the relationship is not giving me really what I want, and that person's not close enough. I don't feel close enough to that person to share this, right? And distinguishing those two.
Yeah, because then you're going to keep hiding yourself. You'll go for another relationship, and I think you'll hide yourself again because you don't truly think inside that you're worth it. And that's why I'm dating myself, because I need to feel that way so I can draw towards me the people that will truly be there and love me, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Katie, do you want to add anything to the whole idea of not disclosing, or kind of knowing that you don't want to disclose, or maybe times that you have disclosed and you wish you wouldn't have? Anything around that?
Yeah, I think what Dace was saying really resonated, that I don't know if I've ever felt burned by telling anybody or wish that I hadn't told someone, because every time you tell someone, it's a learning experience. I think cliched as it is, it's them than it is you. And it's a very Marie Kondo way of living. You can say, well, if you're not bringing me the very best from your reaction of telling you this information, if you're not bringing me joy, if you're not bringing me love, if you're not bringing me satisfaction, then you're out. There's no reason for you to be here. And I think, yeah, like Mary said, spark joy. I think if anything that we can say we've learned from this experience is that we all need more joy wherever we can glean that from.
Yeah.
And a very effective way of doing that is telling people and then seeing the aftermath of that.
Yeah. Thank you.
I wrote that down, Katie.
Yeah. I was wondering where the Marie Kondo connection fit in, but that's it, right? Sparking joy for me.
Tidying up too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right, tidying up. Okay, and then so now kind of just so considering like the whole idea of disclosing, so it's something that you want to share this with, and how do you go about navigating like what challenges unique to having like how do you go about communicating that the challenges unique to having a brain cancer and what's important to share and what do you not want to share? Kelly, can I start with you this time?
Yeah. Since I had my brain surgery, I get tired more, and sometimes I have a tough time doing certain things, finding words sometimes, and I actually need help sometimes. And it can be this is more like in the moment. I do in the moment use that to really express things that like I might need support with, but I do say things up front. I mean, because I think you need to communicate clearly with your partner, for me, on what we both need. And there are just times, I mean, I just cannot stay up all night anymore talking like secrets. What's your favorite color? I mean, I'm tired. I got to go to bed, and it's not a diss. It's just where I'm at. So I guess I guess I take it as it goes, but I try to give them some forewarning, that sometimes they get, just how I operate. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, Katie, do you want to jump on that?
I think what comes to mind is this topic of mortality, because that's something that I feel very acutely, and I think everyone on this call can resonate with that. And that's just, I don't know how to have that conversation with someone else. It's hard to think about it when it's just you, yourself, and you. And then you get into these messy subsequent questions of, well, am I staying with someone because I want to be taken care of? To Dace's point earlier, is someone feeling obligated to stay with me because they want to take care of me, or they would feel guilty if they left me, quote unquote, on my own? And are they looking for a serious long-term relationship? Because I might not be around for a serious long-term relationship. And these are just questions that don't go in the general sense of dating. They're just, that's what no one is expecting by any means, let alone when you're casually dating, to say, hey, by the way, my lifespan might be 15 years. By the way, my favorite color is purple.
Yeah, like it gets very real very fast, right?
Yeah.
That's
That's
I'm so glad you brought that up.
yeah.
Dace or Kelly, do you want to respond or add on?
I think that's probably one of the biggest ones. So I think the question was like, how do you navigate kind of communicating about like unique challenges that we have as brain tumor patients or survivors?
Yeah.
And I think part of that question is answered earlier when talking about like, when do you disclose certain things? Like when, Kelly was talking about, at certain times when there are things happening that we can use those as. But I also think I what Katie said makes so much sense to me and really resonates with me. Like it's really difficult to separate the experience of having a brain tumor from the experience of like direct confrontation with your mortality and identity. So I might be a little bit lucky in that I just find this stuff really fascinating anyway, like even before having a brain tumor. Consciousness, identity, mortality, all of these things, like I do find myself, I'm just a very curious individual. And so for me, using curiosity as a tool for me has been really helpful, because it helps me to kind of turn down the temperature on the weight of some of these big things that we need to talk about and just say, how does this affect me? How can you imagine what it's like? Imagine talking to someone for the first time and trying to explain like, that you can't stop thinking about dying, or, that your nervous system gets overloaded a lot easier than anyone else's, or that you have trouble planning things. Like, using that opportunity to say, like, do you ever feel that way? What is it like for you to feel, overwhelmed? Or like, do you think about, what do you think about like the late stages of your life? Like, this is obviously, maybe this isn't first date, conversation, but just finding a way to get curious about some of these things instead of being kind of reactive to it, for me, has been really helpful. I also find it really helpful to talk about these things regularly outside of the clinical environment, right? Like, I want to talk about it with my family and my friends, and I would like to see more normalization of conversations that we all experience as human beings. We all are going to die. Every single one of us, every single person on the screen, every single person that will ever watch this, we're all going to die. We're all going to have challenges. Why do we work so hard to hide them? I would rather work hard to like say, hey, can we just have these conversations openly and honestly? It doesn't have to be a big deal, but we can just talk about stuff. So I don't know that that's a great answer, but it's the one I have right now.
Yeah.
I think when I was first diagnosed and I had my brain surgery, and then they have that meeting with you where they talk about how it's going to be for you and take your staples out. And I think that year was really hard for me. And I constantly thought about that. And then maybe the next year I thought about that a lot. And I had to, I'm in a place now where I know I can go there, but I'm very careful with the way that I manage my thoughts, so I don't fall back into a cyclical pattern of thinking about that. And it doesn't mean I don't, but I don't know. And so I think there's a healing, there's an element of this, I think, that doesn't involve processing and healing and getting to a place where I feel like I am at the moment where I'm like, well, like Dace is saying, I don't know. I mean, I drive in my car sometimes, my mind will wander and I'll think, yeah, I don't know how long my life will be. I don't know, and sometimes I forget to live my life. That's why I feel like it's super important for me to process all of this. And because when I'm not feeling my feelings, because there's too many feelings, or if I don't want to actually be vulnerable, I'm not really living my life. I am just watching it happen in front of me. And it's super important for me to live it because I just don't know. I don't know, and I know nobody knows, right? But I feel it differently because of this experience. And I feel like I'm crying. And so I don't know. I think there's a place to put it where it goes with you, but it's not all of it. And I don't know. I actually haven't really discussed this with any partner. And I'm thinking now, were those relationships that deep and that vulnerable? Did we get there? I don't know. I don't know. It's a process.
Right. And it sounds like also part of you, the process of you dating yourself, right? You getting to know yourself, what you're comfortable with, what's important to you, and what, the line of living your life fully, and also kind of dealing with the realities of this illness. And
right.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Okay, so I have a couple more questions here. And also I want to just let those of you who are watching, please, if you have questions or you want to submit some questions or comments about what we're talking about, please use the Q&A box and we'll have some time at the end for answering your questions as well. But I do have a few more here. So this one, Katie, you mentioned this a little bit before about your post-traumatic stress that you had after your surgery. And so I am curious just about like if medication or mental health has any influence on dating interactions and behavior. Has that kind of come up? Can you talk a little bit about that, how it's come up in your world of dating?
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of mental health and all the various ways that you can address it. I still do therapy every week, and I was on a pretty potent antidepressant called venlafaxine or Effexor for a year and got off of it in the spring. And because I wasn't dating while I was on it, I can't really speak to how it affected things like sex drive or some of the side effects. But I think that it's been interesting to continue with therapy while dating. Sometimes that's an added element in what I talk about because I'm feeling alienated from people and I don't know how to disclose or when to disclose a lot of the topics that we've touched on up to this point. But I will say that from my experience, people tend to be very open and understanding if you choose to voice the fact that you're receiving care, whether that be medication or therapy or a combo, because something that someone said to me in the last couple of days is that we're all broken to some extent. And I think that's a good reminder because we can get wrapped up in our own problems, especially us as brain tumor patients, because we think that we've been through such a unique thing, which is true. But it doesn't necessarily mean that we're any more broken than someone else that we pass by on the street. Mm-hmm. And it just manifests itself in different ways. There are different causes. And I think that is so critical to realize because even though the person you're dating might not have cancer, they could have childhood trauma and they could also be receiving therapy and medication. And that's a common linkage. And that is more important than your differences.
Yeah. Thank you.
That's a good point.
Well said. Kelly or Dace, do you want to add on around that? Medication, mental health, kind of how that kind of plays into your dating experience.
Kelly, you got anything?
Of course. I have so much on this topic. I have been to therapy for many years, even before my brain tumor. I 100% believe in talk therapy. But what I actually realized lately, which has helped me a lot, is just working on my nervous system. Because your nervous system stores so much of this trauma. And I just didn't realize I was walking around with a really heavy backpack on all the time. I mean, you're always carrying it, so you don't notice. And then I did these other, things that started with my nervous system and then went up to talking. Sorry, my dog is growling in the background. Just different types of therapies that really worked on my nervous system. And I feel a lot lighter and I feel like I'm letting go of a lot of things that I didn't even know I had. So I just think it's good to keep working on it and think about different ways and really think about the things you're storing that you don't even think about. But I know that caused me to maybe pick people that weren't right for me. And so I think it's important to continue to work on yourself, even if things go back to normal and you don't even notice it. You're like, oh, well, I guess I'm fine. I don't know. It's probably hiding back there.
I'm curious how you noticed that it caused you to pick people that weren't right for you, like that connection.
I think I felt, I'm so sorry, I have to hold this dog. I think I felt like, we all have these I know everyone's going to go, Kelly, I don't know. But I think we have subconscious things we believe about ourselves, about our worth, about if we are worthy of love. And you might think different things, but your behavior can show a different pattern. And I think I was just picking people who weren't emotionally available, who couldn't show up for me. Because I think I felt like, I may end up alone. And then I think I was actually making myself be that way. And because you you draw towards you, I think what you present, how you feel inside, I think shoots out and people feel it. And the people that were interested and that I found interesting were not the right ones. But I will tell you, I've been really facing myself and unraveling a lot of this trauma from different things in my life, but also brain surgery. And it's interesting to see the world, like to see the world after that, see who shows up for you, see what you find attractive. It's leveled up.
Mm.
Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Dace, do you want to add anything around this topic of mental wellness?
Yeah, sure. I'm smiling because I feel like this is just a topic that like any person on this call probably has so much to say about. I really like what Katie said about trying to just remembering that like we all have stuff that we're going through. We're all, what did you say? Someone said like we're all broken, you know, in some way. And that sounds kind of defeatist, but to me, I don't really see it that way. It really is like a connected, it's part of the universal human experience. We all have our stuff that we're going through. I almost slipped there and said something worse. We all have our stuff that we're going through. I remembered that this was recorded and I was like, hold on.
We'll have to get the beeper.
That's right. I can be a pirate later. But just remembering that we all are going through something is actually been, for me, one of the like most important things in moving through this experience. And I totally agree that it can feel sometimes like we've been through so much. We have this very specific thing, and that we've traversed so much. And like Katie said, that is true. And it also makes it hard to not identify with that when you have other people telling you that too. Like other people are constantly, in my experience, like, oh my God, you've been through so much, I can't even imagine. And it's like, you're right, you can't. You try, but I mean, it's, you know, it's a very different experience. Mental health, I'm a huge proponent of therapy. The other reason I was giggling when you asked me is because I think everybody needs therapy. Everybody. I think we should be passing it out like cards. Like instead of spending money on half the thing that we're spending money on, just like as a society, I mean, we all could benefit from therapy in our own ways. And we're just going to be better people because we also will not only like learn to understand like what our expectations are of other people, but also have the expectation, like have healthy expectations of ourselves and what we're bringing to relationships. And how else do you do that aside from kind of working out some of the places that you've been and trying to understand your own stories and your own projections and what you're putting on other people? Talk therapy, I think, is awesome. And there's a limit. And that's why I really like what Kelly said too about, you know, focusing on the central nervous or just the nervous system. Like our bodies do carry trauma, you know, like there's so much in our bodies. And I think there's books, so many books written about it. There's one that's really popular right now called Body Keeps the Score. And it's all about that. You know, it's all about the trauma that we carry in the body and how that shows up and manifests. So I think really, when I think about mental health, it's absolutely a critical part of this experience, but I really think about how do we balance the body and the mind. And, you know, there's a bunch of things like mind-body skills and different techniques that we can use to kind of do that. And I think it's all important. So yeah, that's huge. When it comes to medication, definitely a challenge. I wasn't prepared to talk about, not prepared. I didn't think to bring this up, but it's kind of a funny time for you to ask that question because I just finished my most recent round of chemotherapy. And at least for right now, I'm done, which is really good. Who knows in the future? But every time I'm on chemotherapy, my sex drive just plummets. My desire to want to be physically intimate with anyone just goes away. My body feels like crap. It's toxic. You know, yeah. We generally take medicines to feel better, to make things, you know, feel better. And this is a type of medicine that we take that it's doing something, but it makes us feel so much worse. How can you possibly be expected to like, you know, show up as like a, you know, fully engaged partner, whether that's a casual dating thing that you're going through, you know, exploring, or you're in a committed relationship. So that's where communication is really, really important. And that's just chemo, man. Another one that I had a really big challenge with that I would imagine a lot of people on this call would probably experience, whether you've been through chemotherapy or not, is Keppra. And in the brain tumor community, that drug comes up as a boogeyman all the time, and for good reason. It creates wild emotional mood swings, for me, like a lack of an ability to regulate my emotions and kind of challenges impulse control. Some of that might be, you know, the area where my tumor was too, but like those are really hard things to communicate about. So it absolutely plays a role. And I think that, you know, that conversation is going to be different whether you're dating casually. Maybe you build space in your time, like maybe don't date while you're on chemo actively, you know, or like maybe just like not don't date, but like don't go on dates that week. Or, you know, if you know that there are certain medications that, you know, really affect you, you can just say, you know, I really don't feel myself when I have to take some of these things that are, you know, it's part of my experience. And if they want to know more, you can divulge more, but it's sticky, and I don't know there's a good way to do it. But medication and mental health, primary importance.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, and it's complicated because you don't really know all the ways it's affecting you, so it's hard to communicate that to someone else too. And it might be one of those things where Kelly was mentioning, like warning people ahead of time is great if you can, but also it could be an opportunity for sharing more if you know.
I mean, I know I was difficult on Keppra, but they talk about it like it. I don't think back on it. They're like, do you think this is maybe impacting your mood? And I'd be like, no, I think I'm fine. But I wasn't.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Wow, that's really wild. Like I had the experience of like very like viscerally being like, I'm gonna tell a little story. It'll be super short. My friend Elizabeth was staying with me when I got home from my first surgery back in 2014, and we have very different ways of living. I'm pretty tidy. I like to keep things organized. I'm not anal, but I like to just keep things very, you know, organized. She is the most creative person I know. She's like a fairy. I don't even think her feet touch the ground. And when she moves from one room to another or from one thing to another, she leaves like a wake of disarray in her wake. And I love that about her. And when I was fresh out of brain surgery and like on Keppra and like emotionally dysregulated in this environment where I had this person in my space, I remember one day we were laying in bed and I was trying to tell her how frustrated I was that she like left a cabinet open or left like a jar lid off the honey jar or something. It should have been such a simple thing to say, but like I couldn't even get the words out without just like sobbing. And I was like, I don't know why this is so hard for me. And it was so weird. And she just kind of like, she handled it really well. And she's like, oh, and she like, I shit you not. And there's my word. Sorry. She like patted me on the shoulder and said, oh, it's okay. Now you know what it's like to be a woman. I didn't say this, she did. But she's like, I feel like you just leveled up. Now you know what it's like to be a woman. And I was like, this is what it's like. This is wild. So there's all kinds of weird stuff that can happen. And it's crazy, Kelly, like that you feel like you couldn't even tell, because for me it was so obvious. Like I was shaking.
You know, no, I was also that story was hilarious. I loved it. I was also shaking and I was very rageful and I was very moody, but I felt like everything I did was very like I felt like it deserved that level of reaction. And I was like, you know, yeah, well, don't brush my hair that way when I have staples in my head. And then they still discuss it. And I'm like, God, cool it on the Keppra talk. We all got it.
Yeah.
I wasn't very nice. Yeah. Who knows? I don't know, whatever.
Yes.
That's all I got.
Thank you. That's so great. I love this conversation. I know I have a few more questions. Again, I want to invite anybody who is watching who wants to submit a question, please do put it in the Q&A box, but I'll keep going with my questions. And so here's a big question, and then I know we're soon going to break it out to after the show, but how do you manage your own and others' expectations when dating? You know, how does that play into, how do you navigate that expectations?
I mean, that's a hard one sometimes.
Yeah. I think, you know, when we were talking before, I know we talked a little bit about codependency versus like healthy interdependency and kind of knowing that. But what comes up for you around that? Do you want to jump in, Kelly?
I think there are things that I can say upfront to people, like I'll get very tired, I might forget words and I might need help. But there are other things that I don't even know are limitations that will come up. And then I feel there can be stressors. And actually, I think I need to be better at actually saying that to them in the moment. You know, I don't drink a lot because I'm really trying to control all that I can control in my body. And sometimes I seem like a downer, and that can, you know, in that way I struggle to share out. And I don't know, I think it's because I assume they won't understand. But I know we were talking about dependency and codependency, and there's so many. I remember I broke up with a boyfriend, and we had dated for a while, and we kind of thought it would work out. And I think there was such a loss because he was very supportive of all of my MRIs. He would take me there, and it just seemed like, you know, everything else wasn't going great, but that piece was so great. And it was really painful to lose that. It's still very painful, but I know that wasn't for me. So I think that's kind of what we were talking about a little bit. I think it's really hard to not say, oh, well, that means more than it should, or you know what I mean? I don't, because there's so many parts of you. It's not just, you can't just stay with someone because they take you to your MRI and they care. There's your whole lot, you know, there's so much of me that needs to be met and seen.
Yeah.
But it's very painful. That was I hate thinking about it.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know. You kind of feel like you kind of think sometimes in loss, like this sense of, I don't know what the phrase is, but like, will I ever find anybody who can meet me here? Yes, I will. Yes, you will. But you fear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry,
Thank you.
didn't mean to.
Thank you. Katie or Dace, do you want to talk about that a little bit, about the whole idea about codependency versus healthy interdependent relationship, and what you notice about your relationships in that regard? You don't have to add anything if you don't want to. It's a big question.
I'd be happy to. I feel like I've been talking a lot. Katie, would you like to share anything, or would you like me to go?
I'm going to think about it a little bit. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay. So I actually like this question for a reason that it's related to being chronically ill, but I actually think this is just bigger than it is. All of these things are bigger than just, you know, having brain cancer. But one of the things that I really struggle with about our society as a whole is the expectation of our partner to be everything for us.
Mm-hmm.
They're expected to be our emotional support system, our physical support system, our like sexual gratification system, our, you know, like divulge your deepest, darkest secrets, make the deepest commitments, follow them to the end of the earth. Like, I know this isn't this way for everyone, but at least in my experience of a lot of modern society is this expectation of your partner to be so much. And I really think that there's a lot of opportunity to not lean so heavily on one person for everything, and to be more dependent on different people in your lives that are able to offer you different things. And that's going to be different for everyone. Some of us are a lot more isolated than others. I'm speaking from a position of privilege and blessing that I happen to have a lot of friends and family and people in my life that I care about. I feel like I've kind of like lovingly curated them, and I've like Kelly, I think Kelly was saying earlier about like the people that you want to have around you, like you get more selective through an experience like this, and you only give time to the people who really, you know, tend to show up for you, or at least show the desire to. So I really believe in asking for what you need and being clear about that with people that go well beyond just your partner. So kind of a rambling answer right now, but I think when it comes to expectations, I think the first step is getting really clear on what are our expectations of our partners. Are there things that I, you know, might be able to have some needs met in different ways? You know, do I have different family members or different friends, or maybe even have different partners? You know, something we haven't talked about a whole lot is, you know, the difference between casually dating and long-term dating. And, you know, if you are casually dating, is it okay if you're doing that at the same time as you're, you know, long-term dating? And is it okay to ask for different things from different people? Like, everyone's got to design what's right for them. But I think that getting really clear on what our expectations are of the people that we are entering into relationship with, no matter whether platonic or not, is really important.
Yeah.
Is someone really good at like giving rides? Like Kelly, you're mentioning, this person who was really good in this one area. Is it possible? And this is a hypothetical. You don't have to answer this right now, but is it possible that like that's a person who could evolve into like just like a really solid long-term friend that is able to like help you in this, regard, and you also can continue dating? Not saying that was that way for you, but just even getting in the habit of asking ourselves these questions, I think is really helpful.
Yeah. I love that. You don't have to get everything from one person. You don't have to look for that one person for everything.
Yeah.
That's very freeing.
Yeah.
To hear you say that, you know what I mean? I think, can I just add, and Katie, I don't want to like talk too much, so cut me off. But I think it's actually really nice to have friends who have had any sort of cancer history. Sometimes no one's going to understand what I really am feeling, and I just know I can't. I just need to go find that person and say this one random thing, and they'll be like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's all I had.
That's a plug for our peer support program too. Like if if you don't feel like you have anybody in your life that really understands, you could just talk to about somebody who really gets it. Please know that you can reach out to our peer support program, and we can connect you with some of these wonderful people you see here. So Katie, do you want to add anything? We are at about time, but there is one question in the question box which I would love to get to before we close up.
Yeah, absolutely. I just saw that question as well. The only thing I think I would add on this subject is expanding on what Dace was saying about these societal norms and expectations, because we as brain tumor patients already break the mold, very much so. And to Kelly's point, other people don't realize that. And so there's still this direct and indirect attempt of shoehorning us into expectations of, you date someone and then you get engaged and then you get married and then you have children, to the question in the box. And it can feel very constrictive to be living in that life that people have created for you in their minds, and you just know that it's not right, and you're trying to communicate that to your friends, to your family, to your partner, and that's a real struggle, I think, of this situation that we all find ourselves in, and trying to navigate that. So I think allowing yourself to not feel that pressure, and if you want all of those things, then that's totally fine. That's up to you, but you also shouldn't feel pressured by the outside world to conform.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
And yeah.
So I do want to just ask the question in the box, and that is around children. Any thoughts about, having or raising children?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to have kids. I mean, 200%. And I didn't look at the question. I do worry sometimes, especially like I'm like see this anxiety movement I'm doing here. I do stress sometimes about how that will go, if I'll have the energy or I'll be here or whatever. But I don't feel that my life should be limited by the fact that I had a brain tumor. I don't feel that I should change. And I did ask myself that. I asked my oncologist that, I said, maybe I shouldn't have kids. And the response I got was, no way. Do you live your life? So that's what I say. I don't know. What do you guys think?
My thoughts on this kind of echo a little bit what I said in the answer to the last question. I actually have a really close friend who is also a brain tumor survivor who's struggling with this exact question. And like, do I bring kids into the world, knowing what I know about my diagnosis and my partner? Am I going to be saddling them with like raising these kids without a parent and all of this stuff that comes up? And I really feel like this is one of those areas where we can look also to other cultures and say, look, Kelly, I like what you said about like, I'm not going to be limited. I'm not going to be held back by, this experience. I'm going to do what I want to do. There are ways that we can raise children in community that don't involve just the single, like parent or nuclear parents. It's like traditionally in a lot of different cultures, the communities have raised children. So I think that that's one of the answers that comes into this, is like, how can people in your community help you with, if that's something that's important to you. I've decided that I'm not going to have children personally, but it doesn't, I go back and forth on it. Like, the more I learn about myself and the more I see my friends have children, which feels like freaking everyone right now, the more I'm like, well, maybe I do want that, but I have to come to terms with, like, you know, the effects that chemo has had on, you know, my potential virality and things like that. So it's definitely a big question, but my thoughts on it are, you know, if it's something that's important to you, I would say pursue it. But just think about, you know, beyond just you and beyond just your immediate partner. Like, what can you and your community do to raise children? That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I love it. A lot of what you're saying too is I think you used the word, Katie, like you're breaking the mold, you're mold breakers, you know, kind of, and just the way you're thinking about all of this, you know, it doesn't have to conform to kind of what traditionally or whatever we think about relationships and all of this. You're really forging new ground. And I think, I know we're over time, but I love this last question that I just want to end on here, which is, what are the most important things you've learned from navigating dating with a brain tumor? What have you learned? What do you want to, can you leave the audience with from your experience? Dace, can we start with you?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still forming.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think for me, I could think more about this, but it feels like a screaming answer from the other side right now is that, like, it's actually been a gift, because it's really helped me get super clear on what I'm willing to tolerate and how, not only who do I want to show up in my life, but how do I want to show up? It's really, really forced me to stop and go, like, what do I value most? If I were to die tomorrow or next week or next month or next year, what do I want that life to look like? And after you get kind of through that first kind of trauma response, you know, to that, you can start to get a little bit more clear, like, plan it out. You know, do I want to have children? Like, do I want to travel? Do I want to build a home, a life? Do I want to focus on experiences? There's all these questions that I think this experience forces into very sharp focus. And I think that, so then my answer would be, the most important thing is that this might actually be a gift. And I hate saying that sometimes. I love saying it, and I hate saying it because I know it sounds really privileged. But how can this be used as a tool to get even more clear on what's really important to you with what time you might have left? That's probably been my biggest learning.
Dace and I have spoken about this before, but just to follow up on what he was saying there at the end, I call it a cursed gift because it feels like too much credit to say it's a gift.
Yeah, it's true.
Because it is a curse as well, let's be honest. But I think it has the possibility to reorient your life for the better. And that's actually a beautiful thing if you let it. And I think, just while I'm speaking, the one thing that I have learned that I could summarize is that I can give people more credit now. At the beginning of all of this, I shut people out immediately and just said, you can't understand it, you'll never understand it, and I'm never going to let you in. And over the last couple of years, I've learned A, how toxic that is, B, how restrictive it is to you and to other people. And if you allow these cracks to appear within yourself and let yourself feel comfortable with that it's an incredible thing to see how willing people are to step up and be there for you. And to points that both Dace and Kelly have made thus far, people have this incredible power and they can use it for good or bad. And that's part of reconstructing your life. You can say, well, you're in it or you're out of it. And it's just a huge learning experience. But overall, people are better than I thought they would be or had the capacity.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's lucky. That's very nice. Great. So wait, what was my question again? I'm sorry.
The question was, what have you learned? What's the most, I guess, the most important thing you've learned from navigating dating with brain tumor?
I'm sorry. I know I should have been thinking.
You don't have to add anything.
My iPad almost fell over. It's totally fine. Honestly, I think you guys are talking about a gift and a curse and like facing yourself. And I found that process very difficult. I feel like that I at first felt like, oh, I know who I am. I know what I'm going to do. I see things so clearly, and then it faded away. And so it has allowed me to, it's given me the opportunity to face myself. And that does take courage. We always talk, I like courage for me with brain tumor and brain cancer is kind of an annoying piece because it's so easy to talk about your courage, but there's other things that are extremely difficult that we just pretend aren't happening. But like, it has allowed me to face myself and become a better person. And I think it's really shown me how important it is to have a healthy relationship and not to settle for anything less than that. And that life is still, I do think in a way I appreciate being alive more because I don't know how long it will go. And that is, it makes me live differently than I'm a different person. I'm still the same, but there's the me before and the me after. Mm-hmm. And loving myself is super important. I just think, it's helped me have higher standards. I think we've already said that of what I need. And because I don't know, I guess I just feel more like living life is a gift and I'm really trying to live it. So I don't know.
Thank you.
That's all I can pull up.
That's perfect and beautiful. I love what all of you said. And so I know we're over time now. That's kind of all the time we have for this portion of it. And I really want to thank all our panelists for your honesty, your vulnerability, and I'll use the word courage and openness. It's really been so eye-opening. And I know that all of you watching could really relate to much of what was said. And thank you for being here. So thank you, Katie, Kelly, Dace. Really, thank you so much for sharing all that you did.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity to share.
Yeah.
It's been a really fun conversation.